The DNA test envelope slipped from Jane Leonard's frayed canvas bag like a secret refusing to stay buried. For a heartbeat, she froze, watching the sealed white envelope skate across the gleaming marble floor of the Apex Tower lobby, coming to rest at the impeccably polished Italian leather shoes of Andrew L. Titus, the man whose name people only whispered. Before we continue, thank you for spending your time with this story. If you're enjoying it so far, please watch till the end and subscribe. It truly helps the channel. Time fractured as his dark eyes, cold as winter stone, shifted from the security manifest in his tattooed hand to the envelope at his feet. "I believe you dropped something, Miss Leonard," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to reverberate off the glass and steel surrounding them. Before Jane could move, Andrew bent down, his imposing 6 feet 2 inches frame folding with predatory grace as he retrieved the envelope. The overhead lights caught the intricate tattoos winding up his hand and disappearing beneath his perfectly tailored sleeve. His expression remained unreadable as he turned the envelope over, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes as they caught the laboratory name printed in the corner. GenPath Paternity Testing. Client, J. Leonard. Alleged father, A. Titus. Jane's fingers trembled as she reached for it, hoping the security cameras watching them weren't close enough to capture what was written there. "Thank you, Mr. Titus," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt as she tucked the envelope against her worn hoodie. "I'm just here to drop off the cleaning supplies invoice for accounting. I'll be out of your way." Andrew's face revealed nothing as he stepped back, but the weight of his gaze told her everything. He knew. Not just suspected, knew. The air between them crackled with unspoken recognition, danger, and something else she couldn't name. "Come with me," he said, his tone making it devastatingly clear this wasn't a request. The suited men flanking him shifted slightly, blocking any path to the exit. "We have matters that require immediate discussion." 3 months into her position serving at Velvet and Steel, the upscale restaurant Andrew owned on the ground floor of this very building, Jane had perfected the art of invisibility. The establishment served the city's elite and those who controlled its shadows, employing dozens of staff across the restaurant and attached casino. It had been easy to fade into the background, just another face in black and white serving champagne in silence. Until today. As she followed Andrew toward the private elevator that led to his penthouse office, Jane's mind raced back to that night in October. The fundraiser at the Meridian Hotel had been crawling with wealth and danger in equal measure, champagne flowing as freely as whispered deals. She'd been there working coat check, invisible in her uniform, when a fire alarm had sent everyone scrambling to the street. In the chaos, she'd found herself in an empty hotel bar with a man in an expensive suit who'd given her a name she later learned was false. He'd been charming, unexpectedly kind, and nothing like the monster whose reputation painted the streets red. The elevator doors closed with a whisper that sounded like a coffin ceiling. Jane watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, each floor taking her further from any possibility of escape. Andrew stood perfectly still beside her, the DNA test envelope held loosely between tattooed fingers, his silence more terrifying than any threat. The penthouse office was exactly what she'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, dark leather, polished wood, and the kind of quiet that money and fear could buy. Andrew moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid without asking if she wanted one. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair facing his massive desk. Jane remained standing, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "I should get back to work. My shift." "Your shift is covered." He set 1 glass on the desk, taking a slow sip from his own. "Sit down, Jane." The use of her first name sent ice through her veins. She lowered herself into the chair, feeling the leather swallow her whole. Andrew circled the desk, perching on its edge directly in front of her. Close enough that she could see the details of his tattoos, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the calculation behind those dark eyes. He held up the envelope. "This test," he said quietly, dangerously, "confirms paternity to me. The question is whether you were planning to tell me, or if you were hoping I'd never find out." Jane's throat tightened. "I wasn't sure what to do." "You weren't sure." His laugh was hollow. So you decided to work in my building, serve drinks in my restaurant, and carry my child in secret. That seems like a decision, Miss Leonard. I needed the job. I didn't know you owned Velvet and Steel until after I started. And when you realized? He leaned forward. Why didn't you run? Because I have nowhere to run to, she wanted to say. Because I'm 3 months pregnant and 2 months behind on rent. Because running requires resources I don't have. I thought I could stay invisible, she admitted instead. Andrew's expression flickered, something almost like respect crossing his features before the mask returned. He opened the envelope, scanning the document inside. When he looked up, his eyes had changed, sharper somehow, more focused. How far along? 14 weeks. The night at the Meridian. You knew who I was. Not until the next day. When I saw your picture in the news. Jane met his gaze, surprised by her own steadiness. You told me your name was Marcus. I did. He set the paper down. That was before I knew I'd see you again. Before this. The city stretched out behind him through the windows, oblivious to the negotiation happening in this room. Jane understood with sudden clarity that whatever happened next would determine everything. Her survival, her child's future, whether she'd walk out of this building or disappear like the others who'd crossed Andrew Titus. What do you want from me? She asked. Andrew's jaw tightened. The question, Jane, is what you want from me. Because like it or not, we're connected now. And in my world, connections are either protected, he paused, letting the weight settle, or eliminated. 3 months earlier. The fire alarm had been a false trigger, someone's cigarette too close to a sensor, but it had emptied the Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom in minutes. Jane had watched the glittering crowd spill onto the street in their designer gowns and tailored suits, champagne glasses abandoned, million-dollar conversations interrupted. She'd slipped away from the coat check station, grateful for the unexpected break. Her feet ached in the required heels, and the smile she'd worn for 6 hours felt permanently carved into her face. The hotel bar on the second floor was deserted, dim lights casting shadows across empty leather booths. I thought I was the only one hiding from the chaos. Jane spun to find a man in a charcoal suit leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened, dark hair slightly disheveled. Handsome in a way that seemed almost dangerous, but his smile was disarming, genuine. I'm not hiding, she said automatically. I work here. Coat check. Then you're entitled to hide. He moved to the bar, stepping behind it with practiced ease. What's your preference? I make a decent old-fashioned, and an excellent excuse to avoid small talk with people I don't like. Jane knew she should leave, return to her station before anyone noticed. Instead, she found herself approaching the bar. I don't drink on shift. The shift's on hold. Fire alarm, remember? He was already pulling down bottles, his movements confident. I'm Marcus, by the way. Jane. He'd made her laugh that night, actual genuine laughter that she hadn't experienced in months. They'd talked about everything except what mattered. His real name, her real struggles, the chasm between their worlds. He'd been kind when he didn't have to be, interesting when most wealthy men she served were insufferable, present in a way that made her forget she was wearing a uniform. When the all-clear sounded an hour later, neither of them had moved to leave. I should get back, Jane had said, not meaning it. You should. Marcus had poured them both water, his hand brushing hers as he passed the glass. But you won't be down there. The event's wrapping up. They'll manage. The kiss had been unexpected, soft at first, then urgent. His hotel room had been on the 10th floor, the kind of suite Jane had only ever cleaned. They'd stumbled through the door, his jacket already discarded, her careful professionalism unraveling with each touch. I don't do this, she'd whispered against his mouth. Neither do I, he'd replied, and in that moment she'd believed him. The morning had arrived too quickly. Jane had woken to find Marcus already dressed, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice cold and clipped as he spoke about territories and problems that needed handling. The warmth from the night before had vanished. She dressed silently, slipping out while he was still on the call. No numbers exchanged, no promises made. Just a memory of someone named Marcus who'd made her feel seen for a few stolen hours. The next day she'd seen his picture in the newspaper. Andrew L. Titus, alleged crime boss, leaving federal court after charges were dismissed on technicalities. Same dark eyes, same dangerous smile, completely different name. And 6 weeks later she'd missed her period. The penthouse apartment overlooked the river, all glass and steel and the kind of silence that only excessive wealth could purchase. Jane stood in the marble foyer clutching her single duffel bag, feeling like an intruder in a museum. "This is where you'll stay," Andrew said, moving through the space with the ease of ownership. "Bedrooms through there. Kitchen stocked. There's a panic button in every room, red switch by the light panels. You press it, my security arrives in under 2 minutes. I can't stay here." Jane's voice sounded small in the cavernous space. Andrew turned, his expression unreadable. "You can and you will. That apartment you're living in? 3 locks, ground floor window, neighbors who wouldn't hear you scream. You think I'm the only one who'll figure out you're carrying my child?" The casual way he said "my child" sent a chill through her. Possession, not affection. "I have a life. You have a job that pays minimum wage and a landlord who's 2 complaints away from evicting you." I checked. He poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter. "Your life, as you call it, is one bad day from collapse. This," he gestured to the apartment, "is stability. Safety. This is a cage. Cages keep things out, Jane. Not just in." Andrew's jaw tightened. "My enemies won't hesitate to use you the moment they learn you exist. And they will learn. They always do." The first night, Jane barely slept. The bed was too soft, the silence too complete, the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows too exposed. She kept expecting Andrew to walk through the door with demands or threats, but he never came. The second day, a woman named Helena arrived with shopping bags. Maternity clothes in Jane's exact size, prenatal vitamins, books about pregnancy. "Mr. Titus wants you comfortable," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. By the third day, Jane understood the architecture of her new prison. Security cameras in every hallway, guards stationed at every exit, her phone now equipped with tracking software for her safety. She could order anything she wanted, go anywhere in the building, but leaving required Andrew's explicit permission. She tested it once, telling the lobby guard she needed fresh air. "Mr. Titus requests you wait. He'll accompany you." Andrew had arrived 20 minutes later, fury barely contained beneath his composed exterior. They'd walked along the river in silence, his hand at her lower back. Protective or possessive, she couldn't tell. People had moved out of their way without being asked, recognition and fear in their eyes. "You don't leave without me," he'd said quietly as they returned. "Not until I know who's watching." That night, Jane stood at the window watching the city below. Restaurants she'd served in, streets she'd walked freely, a life that already felt like someone else's memory. Luxury surrounded her. Imported furniture, original art, technology she'd never afford, but it was all built on a foundation of fear. Her phone buzzed. A message from Andrew. "Doctor's appointment tomorrow. 10 a.m. Non-negotiable." Jane pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the child move inside her. Protected, imprisoned and utterly trapped. Dinner arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, not delivered by staff but prepared by Andrew himself. Jane found him in the penthouse kitchen, sleeves rolled up, tattoos on full display as he plated what looked like professionally prepared osso buco. "You cook?" she asked from the doorway, unable to hide her surprise. "My mother insisted." He didn't look up, his movements precise. Said a man who couldn't feed himself was dependent, and dependent men don't survive long in our world. Our world. Not hers. Never hers. They ate in tense silence at the dining table, the city glittering beyond the windows. Jane picked at the food, which was infuriatingly excellent, while Andrew watched her with that unreadable expression she'd come to recognize as calculation. "You're wondering why I'm here," he said finally. "I'm wondering a lot of things." Andrew set down his fork, reaching for the wine he'd poured himself, water for her. "I had a daughter once. Sophia. She'd be 7 now." Jane's hand stilled. "Had. Her mother was someone I cared about before I understood the cost of caring in this life. Elena. Beautiful, stubborn, thought she could handle my world. His voice remained steady, but something flickered behind his eyes. A rival family wanted to send a message. They took them both. Elena died protecting Sophia, but it wasn't enough. The room felt suddenly colder. Andrew? They left Sophia in front of my building. 3 years old, throat cut, dressed in white. He lifted his glass, drained it. The Kozlov family thought it would break me. Instead, it taught me that everything I love becomes a weapon aimed at my chest. Jane's throat tightened. Then why keep me here? Why not just eliminate the problem? Andrew's laugh was bitter. Because I tried that path already. Spent 2 years burning the Kozlov empire to ash, and when the smoke cleared, Sophia was still dead. Elena was still gone. And I was still here breathing when I had no right to be. He stood, moving to the window, his reflection ghostly against the dark glass. When I saw that DNA test, my first instinct was exactly what you thought it would be. Make you disappear. Erase the mistake. But then I saw you in that lobby, terrified, pregnant, trying so hard to be invisible, and I saw Elena. She'd worn that same expression when she realized what my world would cost. I'm not her, Jane said quietly. No, you're not. Andrew turned to face her. Elena chose this knowing the risks. You had no choice at all. That night at the Meridian I was someone else. You didn't sign up for Andrew Titus and everything that comes with him. Neither did this child. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Andrew crossed back to the table, sitting down with visible effort, as though confessing had physically exhausted him. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Be a father without painting a target on another child's back. But I can't, his voice cracked slightly. I won't lose another one. Not without trying. Jane saw it then, the man beneath the monster. Not redeemed, not forgiven, but human. Grieving. Terrified in ways that had nothing to do with bullets or rivals. The photograph arrived in an unmarked envelope, slipped under the penthouse door while Jane slept. She found it at dawn, drawn to the foyer by some instinct she couldn't name. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The image showed her leaving the doctor's office yesterday, Andrew's hand protective at her back, her pregnancy visible even in profile. Across the bottom, written in red ink, "Congratulations on the baby." Jane's scream brought security crashing through the door within seconds, Andrew arriving moments later, barefoot and furious, his shirt unbuttoned. He took one look at the photograph and his expression went deadly cold. Lock down the building. Now. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I want every piece of footage from the last 72 hours, and I want to know who got close enough to this door to deliver this. Within an hour, the penthouse had transformed into a war room. Andrew's inner circle gathered around the dining table, men with hard eyes and harder reputations. Jane sat in the corner, invisible again, listening to them speak in code about territories and retribution. It's the Volkov family, said Marcus, Andrew's lieutenant, a man whose scarred face told stories Jane didn't want to know. They've been testing boundaries since the shipment incident last month. Dmitry Volkov doesn't test. Andrew's jaw tightened. He declares, "This is a message. Then we send one back." No. Andrew's command silenced the room. We don't engage. Not yet. Marcus leaned forward. They know about the girl. About the pregnancy. If we show weakness. I said no. Andrew's voice dropped to something dangerous. We secure what matters first. Jane's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every instinct, she opened the message. Pretty thing you're Jane. My men tell me she's carrying something precious. It would be unfortunate if something happened to two birds with one stone. Regards, DV. The phone slipped from her fingers. Andrew was across the room instantly, reading the message over her shoulder. His expression shifted from fury to something worse. Calculation. Everyone out, he ordered. Now. The room emptied in seconds. Andrew pulled Jane to her feet, his grip firm but not painful. Pack a bag. 5 minutes. We're leaving. Leaving where? Somewhere they won't look. He was already moving, pulling out his phone, barking orders. Safe house upstate. No paper trail, no digital footprint, nobody except Marcus knows the location. Andrew? They threatened you. His voice cracked slightly. They threatened our child. I won't. He stopped, visibly forcing control back into place. I can't protect you here. Not when they're this bold. Jane saw the fear beneath his fury, the same terror she'd glimpsed during dinner. This wasn't about pride or power. This was about Sophia, about Elena, about history repeating itself. How long? She asked. As long as it takes to end this. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Jane's phone buzzed again. Another message, another photograph, this time of her old apartment building, flames visible in the windows. The text read, "You weren't there. How disappointing." Andrew's face went white. They torched it. They're eliminating your old life, making sure you've got nowhere to run except through me. His hand found hers. Jane, I'm sorry. You're in this now. Completely. She looked at the burning building on her screen, at the ashes of her former independence, and understood, there was no going back. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a lakeside cabin. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, security systems that would shame a military installation. Jane had been there 3 days when the screaming started. She woke at 2 a.m. to muffled sounds from the basement, guttural and desperate. Her first instinct was to hide, but something, foolish curiosity or terrible need to know, pulled her from bed. The stairs descended into darkness, the sounds growing clearer with each step. The basement door was steel, slightly ajar. Through the gap Jane saw Andrew. He stood over a man zip-tied to a metal chair, his white shirt splattered with blood, his tattooed hands gripping a pair of pliers. Marcus stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching with professional detachment. I'll ask one more time, Andrew said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Who gave Volkov the doctor's office location? The man spat blood. Go to hell, Titus. Andrew moved with surgical precision. The crack of bone was followed by a scream that made Jane's stomach turn. She pressed her hand over her mouth, frozen in the doorway. The lady upstairs is pregnant with my child, Andrew continued as if discussing whether. Your boss threatened her. Threatened to kill her and my baby. So you'll understand why I'm not feeling particularly merciful tonight. Another crack. Another scream. Jane's vision blurred, bile rising in her throat. It was Polly, the man finally sobbed. Polly from your security team. Volkov's been paying him for months. Andrew straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. See? Cooperation. He nodded to Marcus. Finish it. Make it clean. Jane stumbled backward as Marcus pulled a gun, but not fast enough. Andrew's head snapped up, his eyes finding hers in the darkness. For a moment they simply stared at each other, she seeing him as he truly was, he seeing her seeing him. Jane. She ran. Up the stairs, through the living room, her pregnant body clumsy and slow. She made it to the bedroom before he caught her, his hand gentle on her arm despite the blood still staining his cuffs. Don't touch me. Her voice broke. Jane, listen. You tortured him. She yanked free, backing against the wall. You broke his fingers and you were going to kill him and you didn't even flinch. He betrayed me. Put you at risk. So that makes it okay? That makes you? She pressed both hands to her stomach, feeling the child move. What am I doing here? What kind of father will you be when this is who you are? Andrew's expression cracked, something raw and wounded beneath. The kind who keeps you breathing. The kind who makes sure our child doesn't end up like Sophia. He stepped closer, voice dropping. You think I want to be this? You think I enjoy it? I think you're good at it. Too good. The gunshot from below echoed through the floorboards. Final. Absolute. Jane flinched, Andrew didn't. That man helped target you, he said quietly. Helped plan your death and our child's death. If being a monster keeps you safe, then I'll be a monster. But don't ask me to apologize for it. Jane slid down the wall, tears streaming. I can't do this. You don't have a choice. Andrew crouched before her, his bloody hands carefully not touching. Neither of us do any more. The federal agents arrived at dawn, battering ram through the reinforced door, tactical gear and shouted commands, shattering the tense peace. Jane woke to chaos. Flashlights, weapons, Andrew being slammed against the wall with hands behind his back. Andrew Titus, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and organized crime activities. I have a pregnant woman in this house. Andrew's voice cut through the noise. You breach like this, you put her at risk. The woman is Jane Leonard, currently held against her will according to our intel. The lead agent, badge reading Morrison, looked past Andrew to where Jane stood frozen in the bedroom doorway. Ma'am, are you here voluntarily? Every eye turned to her. Andrew's gaze held a desperate plea and a warning both. One word from her could change everything, or end it. Jane's throat closed. The explosion came before she could answer. The south wall erupted in fire and smoke, the concussive force throwing everyone to the ground. Through the ringing in her ears, Jane heard gunfire, not federal weapons, something heavier, more aggressive. Volkov. Marcus's voice somewhere in the smoke. It's a setup. The federal agents scattered, caught between tactical retreat and engagement. In the chaos, Andrew broke free, diving toward Jane as armed men in black poured through the destroyed wall. Get her out. Andrew shoved Jane toward Marcus, who'd appeared like a ghost from the smoke. Back exit now? Andrew? A bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He returned fire with a weapon Jane hadn't known he was carrying, his face twisted in pain and fury. Marcus dragged her backward, her feet barely touching ground. No. We can't leave him. He's buying you time. Don't waste it. They made it to the garage before Volkov's men caught up. Jane heard the footsteps, saw Marcus's expression shift from determined to resigned. He pushed her behind a vehicle, his gun raised. Whatever happens, he said, you protect that baby? It's what he'd want. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. Marcus took down 3 before a bullet found his throat. He dropped, blood pooling on concrete, his eyes finding Jane's one last time before going empty. Jane's scream died as hands grabbed her from behind, a cloth pressed over her mouth. Chemical sweetness flooded her senses, her vision tunneling. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Andrew, wounded and surrounded, federal agents and Volkov's men both closing in. His eyes found hers across the burning safe house, and she saw something that terrified her more than the violence. Goodbye. When Jane woke, she was in a van, hands zip-tied, her head pounding. Across from her sat Dmitry Volkov himself, silver-haired, elegant, and smiling like a predator who'd finally cornered his prey. Welcome, Miss Leonard, he said in accented English. Your Andrew sent my regards, though he won't be joining us. Such unfortunate timing, arrested by federals while his empire burns. Poetic, really. Jane's hand went to her stomach. Still there. Still moving. Don't worry, Volkov continued. The child lives. For now. You're far more useful as leverage than corpses. He leaned forward. Let's discuss how you're going to help me destroy what's left of the Titus family. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, Jane realized she was utterly, completely alone. They kept Jane in a warehouse by the docks, the kind of place where screams disappeared into the sound of machinery and water. Volkov visited daily, always polite, always threatening, outlining exactly how he'd use her child to bring Andrew to his knees. He's in federal custody, Jane said on the 3rd day, her voice hoarse. He can't help you even if he wanted to. Volkov smiled. Andrew Titus has resources even prison can't contain. And for you? For his child? He'll burn every bridge he has left. He placed a phone on the table between them. Call him. Tell him what I want. And what do you want? Everything. His territories, his accounts, his contacts. Complete surrender. In exchange you live. The baby lives. He rots in a cell knowing you're safe. Volkov's expression hardened. Or he refuses, and I send him pieces of you until there's nothing left to bury. Jane's hands trembled as she picked up the phone. The call connected after 2 rings. Jane. Andrew's voice cracked with relief and desperation. Are you hurt? Is the baby? We're alive. She closed her eyes. Andrew, he wants everything. Your entire empire in exchange for us. Silence stretched across the line. When Andrew spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made her chest ache. Put him on. Volkov took the phone, his smile victorious. Titus, ready to discuss terms? Jane couldn't hear Andrew's response, but she watched Volkov's expression shift from triumph to confusion to fury. You're bluffing, he snarled. You'd never. The explosion shook the building. Not outside, inside, deep in the warehouse where Volkov's men were stationed. Gunfire erupted, close and getting closer. What have you done? Volkov grabbed Jane, dragging her up, a gun pressed to her temple. Titus, call them off or she dies. The warehouse door exploded inward. Federal agents poured through, but leading them, impossibly, was Andrew. Wounded, handcuffed, flanked by Agent Morrison, but here. I made a deal, Andrew called out, his voice carrying across the chaos. Everything I know, everyone I've worked with, every crime I've committed. Full cooperation. Witness protection. In exchange for federal intervention to save her. You betrayed your own people, Volkov breathed. I chose my family. Andrew's eyes found Jane's. The only family that matters now. Jane felt the gun press harder against her skull. Volkov's hand shook with rage. Then watch her die. She moved on instinct, the self-defense Marcus had taught her during those long days at the safe house. Elbow back into Volkov's ribs, duck low, twist away. The gun discharged, the bullet missing her by inches. Federal agents swarmed Volkov before he could fire again. Jane fell to her knees, hands protecting her stomach, gasping. Andrew broke free from Morrison, crossing the warehouse despite his restraints, despite his wounds, dropping beside her. You're safe, he whispered, his forehead pressing against hers. You're both safe. You gave up everything. I gave up nothing that mattered. His voice broke. I lost Sophia because I chose power over protection. I won't make that mistake twice. Agent Morrison approached, weapon lowered. Mr. Titus, we need to move. Volkov's people will regroup. Andrew nodded, helping Jane stand. As they walked toward the federal vehicles, Jane realized the man beside her wasn't the Mafia boss anymore. He was something different, broken, rebuilding, choosing redemption over reputation. What happens now? She asked. Andrew's tattooed hand found hers. We disappear. We start over. We become people who deserve this second chance. For the first time since the DNA test fell, Jane believed him. 18 months later. The coastal town of Pembroke didn't ask questions. Population 3,000, one main street, fishing boats in the harbor and tourists in the summer. Jane watched from the porch of their small cottage as Andrew, now called James Mitchell, carried their daughter down to the beach, her squealing laughter carrying on the salt air. Sophia. They'd named her Sophia. Mama, come. The toddler's voice was pure joy, untouched by the darkness that had preceded her birth. Jane descended the weathered steps, her feet bare in the sand. Andrew looked up and she saw the man from the Meridian Hotel, the one who'd made her laugh, who'd been kind when he didn't have to be. The tattoos were still there, permanent reminders of who he'd been, but everything else had changed. He worked construction now, honest labor that left his hands calloused and his back sore. He came home smelling of sawdust instead of expensive cologne, and Jane had never loved him more. She's fast, Andrew said, catching Sophia as she toddled toward the waves. Definitely gets that from you. The stubbornness is all yours. Their life was small, deliberate, and hard-won. The cottage was rented, their cars used, their savings modest. Federal protection had given them new identities and a fresh start, but the rest they'd built themselves. Jane worked at the local library, her finance degree collecting dust while she shelved books and read stories to children who'd never know she'd once been held hostage by Russian mobsters. Some nights, Andrew woke with nightmares, Marcus's death, Sophia's grave, the moment he'd thought he'd lost Jane in that warehouse. She'd hold him through it, whispering that they were safe, that Volkov was in prison, that the past couldn't reach them here. Other nights, Jane was the one who woke in terror, remembering the basement, the torture, the blood on his hands. Andrew never apologized for what he'd been, but he showed her every day who he was becoming. I never asked, Jane said, watching Sophia play in the shallow water. Do you regret it? Giving up everything? Andrew was quiet for a long moment. I regret what I did to get it. The people I hurt, the lines I crossed. But giving it up? He turned to face her, his hand finding the small of her back, protective, not possessive. I chose you. I chose her. I chose this. How could I regret the only real thing I've ever had? Sophia shrieked as a wave splashed her feet, tumbling backward into the sand. Andrew was there instantly, scooping her up, her tears already turning to giggles in his arms. Jane watched them together. This man who'd been a monster, this child who'd never know that darkness, this life built on ashes and second chances. It wasn't perfect. Andrew's past lurked in shadowed corners, and Jane still flinched at sudden noises. But it was real. It was theirs. It was earned. Ice cream? Andrew called, Sophia bouncing in his arms. Ice cream? The toddler echoed. Jane joined them, three people who'd found each other through violence and chosen to stay through love. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the ocean gold. They walked home together, a family forged not in violence but in courage. Imperfect, scarred, but beautifully, impossibly real. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, subscribe, and share for more stories like this.